Alright, so this is my English 12 midterm exam on Antigone by Sophocles. And in this video, I will give you a little bit of background information. I'll give you a little synopsis of the actual play, and then my opinions on the characters and the themes. Well, before the story Antigone, there is two other plays, Oedipus Rex and Oedipus at Colonus. And in Oedipus Rex, a man named Oedipus solves the riddle of the Sphinx, gains entry to Thebes after their current king was murdered, and seeing as he solved the riddle of the Sphinx, the people elected him king. And he took the former king's wife, Jocasta, had four children with her, Antigone, Ismene, Polynices, and Eteocles, and that's all I'm really going to say on background information, just because I know most people haven't read the first two plays. So in Antigone, like right before Antigone starts, Eteocles and Polynices get into this battle and kill each other, and Jocasta's brother Creon, the Oedipus's brother-in-law, he becomes the king, and he has this royal decree that nobody's to bury or give funeral to Polynices because of his, I guess he said he was a traitor, and that anyone caught trying to give him a funeral or bury him would be sentenced to death. That he was to be left hung up or strung up as an example and to be violated by the birds and the dogs. And his sister Antigone, the central character in the story, she refused to believe this and said that it was her duty to the gods to honor her brother and give him a funeral. She doesn't care the consequences of doing this. And she asks Ismene, her sister, for help. Ismene says no, that she can't go against the laws of the land, and that they're women and they're not meant to go up against men by nature. And after that, it transitions into Creon giving some kind of speech when a sentry comes in and informs Creon that the body is missing and he's not sure what happened to it. And Creon gets really upset about that and says, until we have a culprit, then I'm just going to assume that you did it, so go find the culprit. So the sentry goes out and eventually finds Antigone in the act of putting the holy oils or whatever they are on Polynices' body. So they bring her in before Creon and say, well, here's the culprit. We found her in the act of doing whatever it was she was to the body. And Creon asks if it's true. She says yes. He asks if she knew about his proclamation. Again, she says yes. And did she know of the consequences? Yes, she doesn't care. It isn't his place to say that she can't do that because it's her brother and it's her duty to the gods. And Creon thinks she's crazy and says she's going to reside down below with Hades. And then he asks Ismene if she had anything to do with it, and Ismene tries to say that she did, but we all know she doesn't. And Antigone said basically no, she had nothing to do with it, she didn't even help. So that was that. Then Creon decides, well, then you're sentenced to death and Ismene can just go. And Creon's punishment ends up being that she is to be put in a cave with minimal food and minimal water in order to starve and eventually die very slow and painful death. And he gets into this dispute with his son Haman about taking the side of a woman over his own and taking the side of anybody else over his father's. Because there's one line in the play along the lines of, this was from Creon to Antigone, that as long as he still breathes, no woman shall rule, or something. I don't know exactly what he says, but uh, Creon has an issue with women back, but when this supposedly takes place, women didn't have any rights. So Haman goes to Creon and tells him he needs to think about it, and maybe he's acting too rash. Creon asks, should I listen to someone wiser, or not wiser, but younger than I, on how to rule my own kingdom? Should I listen to the people on how to rule them? And Haman gets really pissed off about it, and they have a fallout. And this blind prophet Tiresias comes and talks to Creon and tells Creon that if you do not let this girl go, if you do not lift this punishment, then you inevitably are going to pay for it. And so Creon goes and tries to get her out of the cave, but he goes and discovers she had already hung herself, and he finds Haman there, upset, and he acts rashly and tries to stab his father, but when he misses, he just turns the blade and kills himself. And Eurydice, who is Creon's wife and Haman's mother, finds out that Haman kills himself, so she too kills herself. And the prophet's proclamation comes true, and Creon pays for what he did. As far as my views on the characters, Ismene was kind of the smarter one in this, in saying that we should just leave it alone. We don't belong fighting this. I don't really think Antigone was too bright, and she acted really wildly. Creon, I think, was a sadistic, power-hungry person, but after everybody dies, then he realizes that he screwed up. And Haman, he acted way too rashly with the whole killing himself thing. I guess love makes people do crazy things or whatever, but now then to themes. The main messages I got out of this are the inequality in gender roles, as I said earlier with the whole Creon thing, of the whole, you, as long as I live, no women will rule, and then there's Creon's pride issue. He refuses to listen to anybody. His rule is absolute, and that's all there is to it. And then there's the religion versus law issue, in which Creon is really devoted to the law and Antigone is really devoted to the gods, and they clash. Which, as like nowadays, there is the separation of church and state, so that way these types of things can't happen, because you can't kill somebody and say, oh, well, Jesus told me to do it, or this was my duty to do it, or you can't break laws and say that because of your religion. So those are really the main things I wanted to talk about, and hope you guys all have a good day. Thanks.